This morning is going to be Allison. She is the acting WCM at the Weather Prediction Center, and she is going to be taking us through the WPC fall and winter season updates. So I will stop sharing my screen here and allow you to take over. And then whenever you are ready, Allison, you can take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Jenny. Let me share my screen here. Okay, and I want to make sure that you all can see that.
Yes, we see it. Looks great.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. All right, well, thank you so much, Jenny and Allie, for the invitation to speak today. I'm very excited to be able to talk to you about some of the upcoming changes and reminders for the winter season from WPC. My name is Allison Santorelli, and I'm currently the acting WCM at the Weather Prediction Center. But outside of this detail, I have been a forecaster at WPC for 12 years. So here's a quick outline of my talk for today. Much of my presentation will be devoted to changes and reminders for this upcoming winter season. And ready or not, now is the time to start thinking about winter. I know it's hard to get ready for winter when it doesn't quite feel like winter outside. I mean, here in Maryland, it's almost 80 degrees today. So it doesn't even quite feel like fall for that matter, but hopefully after my talk today, you'll have a better understanding of what's to come at WPC for the upcoming season. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about the probabilistic precipitation portal, but I don't plan to go in too much depth since I believe the talk right after mine today is also about the precip portal. And finally, I'll end talking a little bit about the upcoming Day 4 to 7 initiative and what it means from a WPC perspective. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So this presentation is not necessarily meant to be a deep dive into our winter weather desk operations at WPC, but rather a highlight of what you need to know in terms of what is changing this coming season. For more details on the winter weather desk operation, please check out the annual webinar, which is linked right there below, or it's also available, I believe, on the Commerce Learning Center. Before I get into the rest of the presentation, I did want to highlight that for the upcoming winter season, we are training some additional forecasters at WPC on the winter shift to assist the primary winter forecaster and enhance the overnight collaboration. Previously, we only had one overnight winter forecaster, and so in busy patterns, the shift could get really, really overwhelming really quickly for that forecaster. This is only for the night shift. On the day shift, we already have 2 winter forecasters. So I wanted to start with this slide to really illustrate and bring home the fact that there are so many different sources the public can use to get their weather information. And there are a lot of different ways to visualize that same forecast. We can't really control what other weather sources or the media puts out, but if we can work together between WPC, the WFOs, the regions, the entirety of the Weather Service, we can work together to create better consistency within the Weather Service, and we can maintain being that trusted source and hopefully the first place people look for their official forecast. And that's really what we're trying to do at WPC, is champion that consistency within the Weather Service, bringing together all of the local expertise of the offices to produce that one NWS forecast. So how do we do that? First of all, WFO to WFO consistency is extremely important. You've probably heard this from us before, but at WPC, we see these WFO border inconsistencies across all the regions in the Weather Service. So don't take this slide. I know it's honed in there on Missouri, Arkansas area, but don't take this slide as me trying to pick on 1 or 2 offices here. We see this across all of the Weather Service, but we're not trying to be the grid police at WPC, but we do want you to see this as a gentle reminder that FEMA and other high-level entities use the NDFD-derived winter products, such as the WSSI, So we do often get questions that come into WPC when there are obvious inconsistencies. And actually, starting in early December, WPC will, for the first time, have a dedicated FEMA liaison, which will allow us to be more connected to FEMA than ever before. Consistency between WFOs and WPC is also just as important, as some of our national viewers are based on different sources. For example, the PWPF viewer that you see here is based on the forecast from our winter weather desk, but the probabilistic precipitation portal is based on the NDFD forecast. Our partners are increasingly reliant on national weather viewers such as these, and so any local edits to either the deterministic forecast or the PWPF introduces an inconsistency. This is not to say that WFOs are not allowed to make local edits. You absolutely can and you absolutely should do that, since edits that may be insignificant on a national scale may be extremely important on a local scale, especially when we're talking about different precipitation types. The bottom line here, though, is that if you do plan to make edits to the WWD forecast, please let us know so that we can ensure consistency across the board. We don't have to be exact, but we do need to know what you're thinking, especially if it's significantly different. And we can try to incorporate some of your thoughts into our final updates in the afternoon and later in the night. And we encourage the WFOs to reach out to us earlier in the forecast process, as early as you can, so that we can see your thoughts and get those incorporated into our preliminary forecast. So the next several slides will highlight some of the changes or reminders as it pertains to the winter weather desk directly at WPC. So our collaborative watch experiment will continue again this season. Last season, we had 3 pods of offices, and this season, we have added a 4th, which is that group of offices in the Upper Great Lakes. And these offices can expect increased collaboration on watch decisions this season with WPC. We specifically picked these Pod 4 offices there in the Upper Great Lakes to be able to test our ability to deal with lake effect snow events. So what does it mean to be in a pod? Starting on or around November 17th, that date is not finalized, WPC will send a proposed watch grid to offices within these pods, which will be viewable within your GFE, with the ability to directly import that into your hazard services. That's the experiment part of this, being able to ingest that watch grid. We will still include offices outside of the pods in the collaboration calls, and your participation in those calls is optional, but we just ask that those offices, as in the offices outside of the pods, are mindful of the overall common picture. And if you're not in a pod office, you'll only be able to view our proposed watch outlines in the online viewer. They won't be ingested into your GFE. And that online viewer is linked on our internal winter weather site. Note that these watch proposals are not the end-all be-all. They're simply a starting point. Modification to these watch areas on your end of the proposed grid before dissemination is okay. These calls are mainly a table setter for conversation and collaboration. And do note that once watches are hoisted for your CWA, you no longer are required to join any subsequent calls after that, unless there's a major shift in the guidance. So this slide may look familiar because I pulled it directly from our one-pager that we have on the collaborative winter storm watch experiment at WPC. But I think it really drives home the motivation for why this is important and the general process. Using ensemble data and a whole variety of other sources, WPC is able to produce a first guess watch area And from there, our collaboration calls allow the WFOs to use that proposed area for collaboration and decision-making within your own CWA. In the end, this should result in a more consistent final picture, cutting down on the WFO to WFO or WFO to WPC boundary inconsistencies that I touched on earlier. So the WPC Watch collaboration calls will follow the same process as our previous winters. And so this slide kind of serves as an overview and basic expectation of those calls. We will send out the NIMNAT prior to the call with all the information that you will need to join. These calls remain focused on watch decisions, so only offices that may be wanting to issue a watch will be included in the calls. In the past, we'd hold calls on big events and include all the offices within the snow footprint, even if it spanned from Western region all the way into the Great Lakes. And so this resulted in calls being entirely too big, too long, and they were a huge time sink for everyone involved. The target for the new format of these calls is that critical decision-making time, or that time when you're starting to think about issuing your watches or advisories. Timing for the calls we've typically held them around 6:30 or 18:30 Z, they're usually held twice a day. But now that we're not doing the CFP anymore like we were in prior seasons, we're not necessarily as locked into a specific time. So there is some flexibility there to hold calls earlier or later, depending on which offices or regions we're working with. This is a nice overview of what you can expect to see on the calls. We'll start with an introductory slide there that you see an example of on the left that illustrates the need to know information for the call. After that, we'll kind of do a deeper dive into some of the data sets or ensemble data that we use to come up with the proposed watch grid, and talk about any changes from the last forecast cycle. We'll show the proposed watch grid, paying close attention to areas or regions where a watch may be needed that wasn't there before. After that, we open the floor to questions or comments from the individual offices involved on the call, with some general discussion with the ROCs on overall messaging. Once the experiment officially begins for this season, a call feedback form will be added to our winter weather internal site, which I will show you shortly here. And we encourage timely feedback on how these calls can be improved. And there we go. As I've mentioned a few times already, we do have an internal winter weather page at WPC where you can find almost everything and anything you ever wanted to know about the winter desk. The link to that page is included above here on the screen. And it is a password protected website, which all offices should have the password for that website. Included here on this website is a whole breadth of information, like I said, but on the right side, you'll see you can view our deterministic snow, ice, and sleet forecasts. Underneath of the forecast display table, if you scroll down, you'll see a lot of different links to a variety of different products and data sources. But the one thing I did want to specifically highlight here is those last two links there in the forecast outlook and impact section, where you can access the proposed watch viewer, the online proposed watch viewer, which looks like this when you pull it up. This page is where the WFOs that aren't included in an experimental pod and thus is not ingesting those watch grids into your GFE. This is where you can go to view our proposed watch grids. There's also a link for just a simple static image of the map there from that page as well. So likely sometime this upcoming winter season, there's no finalization date yet, and this is pending public feedback. WPC plans to sunset our low tracks product, which is the graphic that you see there on the left. And the proposal has it being replaced with a fully automated low clusters forecast tool, which will be located underneath the Forecast Tools tab of our webpage. Over the years, WPC has found that this low tracks product, which is only produced during the winter weather desk season, which runs roughly September to May, it's an overall time sink for the forecasters. So it should save our forecasters possibly up to an hour to an hour and a half of time on shift. It's not a heavily utilized product by our end users, and it's also not particularly a useful product for IDSS because, as we know, winter storm impacts are often very widespread from the low center itself. Anyways, if you have any concerns with this proposal, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and there will be a public comment period coming before the termination is announced via an SCN. I did want to highlight this season, there are no planned underlying science changes being made to either the WSO or the WSSI products. The WSSI, as a reminder, is derived from the NDFD for days 1 to 3, and the data and static images do update every 2 hours on our website. We also have a WSSIP and a hourly WSSI product as well, which I believe at least the WSSIP goes out through 7 days. The WSO is edited and adjusted in GFE by WPC forecasters, and that's available via the ISC. There are configuration instructions on the internal page that I mentioned for the WFOs to ingest and view the winter storm outlook in your GFEs. And one last point I'd like to make, we always encourage offices to provide feedback on these products, but especially this season for the WSO, as we have some social scientists at headquarters working with a focus group on a potential redesign of the product. WPC will continue to produce our key message graphics as we have in previous seasons. Key messages have become an extremely important messaging tool for the entire Weather Service. It's proven to be an effective way to easily translate the science into an easy to understand framework for partners in the public to more easily digest. The important thing to remember is these are meant to be high level and big picture, so more so a complementary to your own local messaging. And as a result, they won't be nearly as detailed as your local messages will be. At WPC, issuances of these are based on meeting certain criteria, but that criteria is flexible. As we know, not all winter storms are the same. In the winter season, we will issue 4 larger scale heavy snow and ice events, but we do also issue 4 snow squall events as well. We don't usually issue solely for extreme cold events, but we will include extreme cold information in the winter storm key messages. And that's really typically because extreme cold outbreaks follow heavy snow events. Once we generate the initial set of messages, we'll communicate that out to the field, usually through Slack, and welcome and encourage feedback as it helps maintain that consistent messaging across the NWS. Key messages are updated twice per day and are accessible from the top stories section of our website. We do have the capabilities to do 2 key messages at once for separate events if need be. And of course, during the summer, we do issue key messages for extreme heat. And we're looking at possibly expanding to other hazardous weather events as well, but nothing has been planned yet. You've probably heard a lot about this, and you're going to hear more about this after my presentation today, but I just, again, wanted to put in a plug for the probabilistic precipitation portal, which should create a standardized and centralized approach to the creation of the IDSS graphics across the Weather Service. I'm not here to do a demo of the product. I just wanted to provide a slide here on where to get more information and a note that this will be there. This is planned to go experimental soon. There hasn't been an official date announced yet, but the last thing I heard was that they were targeting around mid-November. And once this officially goes experimental, the WFOs are strongly encouraged to begin generating their graphics using the probabilistic preset portal. A couple cool new, I think, customization options for the WFOs here. If you click on the 3 lines icon in the upper right-hand corner of the preset portal page, you'll see a couple of options. The custom IDSS graphics link is where, highlighted right there, is where WFOs or regional offices could go in and create those specific graphics that you all need. Not just at a CWA domain, but also state or regional level domains. And I think there's a couple of other different domain options in there as well. The point customization section there allows WFOs to actually go in and customize the points that you see displayed, that you want displayed on your CWA graphics that get posted to your winter pages. And both of these options here are internal to the NWS, so you'll have to log in with your no ID or your CAC in order to access these pages. And there should be more information coming about this soon if it's not already out there. Quick timeline of when you can expect your NDFD updates to be available and ready to use in the portal. Generally, it should take about 45 minutes from NDFD submission to see those updates in the portal. So the probabilistic portal runs every hour to pick up your NDFD forecasts, the latest updates in the NDFD. So if you want your forecasts, they need to be submitted to NDFD no later than about 40 past or 20 minutes before the hour. So in this example, submit your grids by 11:40. The probabilistic preset portal grabs those grids at 12Z, and they should be ready around 25 minutes after the hour there in the preset portal for you to run on your graphics. All right, I wanted to take a few minutes here to add just another plug. I know we've heard way too much about the Day 4 to 7 initiative. And I know there's more questions than answers right now. Outside of this WCM detail, I'm a medium range forecaster at WPC, and we have a lot of concerns and questions on our end too. But I think the important thing to remember here is why this is happening. And it's to relieve the WFOs of the grid editing and the ability to focus more on the IDSS with your local and unique partners. But this initiative is only eliminating grid editing. The WFOs will still need to stay situationally aware to the hazards in the medium range period. The key aspect here is a more standardized approach. If you were on the public program meeting last week, there was a significant discussion on this topic, and I would actually encourage you to look back at the slide deck from that meeting. There were a few things from that which I wanted to highlight again, especially as it pertains to WPC's workflow, which you can see in the general timeline that I have right there on the screen. At WPC, we plan to have 3 dedicated Day 4 to 7 or medium range desks 2 for the CONUS, and 1 for Alaska and OCONUS. We're still working out the specifics on the exact duties and workflow of each of the desks, but the general idea is for our CONUS desks to have 1 desk that's focused on the grid editing and 1 desk that's focused on the IDSS and hazard messaging. There's a lot of logistical details to work out still, including staffing, but testing of the day 4 to 7 concept is planned for some point this coming winter, I believe, and I believe we're initially starting that with Western Region offices. We know that there are a lot of concerns, especially with downscaling and extreme local impacts that we won't always be able to resolve at the national scale. A lot of these sticky issues, as Dave Novak likes to call them, are known and being worked. But if there are any products or other things that you typically do in the medium range timeframe that are dependent on your gridded forecast, now is the time to make that known. On the KENS 10 page, you'll also find a feedback form, so any concerns you can address directly with the team. And there's also a frequently asked questions document and additional details on the initiative on that webpage, which is linked right there above on the screen. This is kind of your one-stop shop for anything and everything related to the day 4 to 7 changes. On the topic of medium range forecasting and hazards, I do want to take a tiny bit of time here. I know I'm running out of time to highlight our medium range days 3 to 7 hazards chart, which we're currently working on a large scale revamp for. With the 4 to 7 initiative happening, this product should become a marquee product in the medium range period, helping to aid WFO situational awareness and IDSS. But there are a lot of limitations and concerns at its current state. We've been working for a while now to identify and address these concerns. Some of our work so far includes updating the criteria, changing some of the hazards, adding some new hazards such as frost freeze, but with a greater focus on the probabilistic thresholds in NWS, the watch, warning, and advisory criteria. We still have a lot of future developments planned. The 2 biggest ones I want to highlight here are moving this product to being produced 7 days a week. Currently, it's only produced Monday through Friday, which, trust me, we know is not great. And we're actually looking to do a complete overhaul to the look and feel of the graphic, because federal partners utilize this graphic. And so we want our changes to make sure our changes are more useful and easier to interpret. What you see there on the left is an example of what the current graphic looks like. And then right here are some very, very early thoughts on what we suggest for a new image. This is not even considered a prototype yet. And so we will still see some changes before the final implementation. I'm unsure if any of these changes will actually happen this upcoming winter season, but I still wanted to include this for your overall awareness. And if you have any feedback on this product at all, please reach out to us. All right, last slide, I promise. I just want to highlight real quickly for those that may be unaware, there has been some management change and internal reorganization within WPC over the past 6 months or so. Following Greg Carbon's retirement in May, Alex Lamers, he's now our forecast operations branch chief. He was previously our WCM, and that position remains vacant. And until a permanent selection onboards, we are filling that position with temporary detailees like myself. We've also added a new section within the forecast operations branch, which we're calling the weather integration and analysis section, which is going to be, that one's managed by Zach Taylor. This new section helps to centralize some of our analysis and forecast products. This is all just an internal reorganization at WPC. So this doesn't change anything from a forecast collaboration perspective. You can still collaborate and talk to us in the same way that you have before. It's just that now we have Zach as an additional point of contact for WPC. And that's it. Thank you for your time. And here you can see a few reminders, including the best ways to contact us for collaboration. Hopefully you've learned something today, but just know that WPC is your national center championing a lot of these efforts that I've discussed today. the winter weather, the winter watch collaboration, the probabilistic preset portal, and the days 4 to 7 initiative. If you have any questions right now, I'm happy to answer them. I don't know exactly how much time we have, but if you have any further questions after today, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, Alex, or our WPC Winter Team Lead, Tony Fracasso. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Allison. We are right up against time, but we had a really quick question that I think will be quick to answer. And that was, how far out are you planning to propose those watch grids? Just because some of the offices have some requirements that they aren't allowed to issue them as far out as they saw some of those proposed watch grids last year.
Oops, sorry. I am not 100% sure on the answer to that question. I'm not sure that there are any changes planned for this year, but certainly just because we're proposing a watch doesn't mean that you have to issue a watch at that cycle. It's, you know, like I mentioned, modifications to those areas that we propose, or even holding off on the watches is allowed. That's totally fine. But I mean, you probably want to make sure that there's consistency between, you know, neighboring offices to make sure that if, you know, you don't want to be the office in the middle that's not going to issue watches, but all the other ones on the outside of you are going to issue watches. So you may want to reach out to Tony Fracasso there. He should be able to give you some more specific information since he's our winter team lead. Okay, great. Thanks so much, Allison. That is all that we have time for with this presentation. Again, it will be recorded. I did verify that the 2024-25 WPC Winter Weather Desk Updates webinar is available right now on the CLC. So if you're interested in reviewing that, you can also use that as a resource. So thanks again, Allison.